Attention, citizens. It's time for Super Pulp Science.
Welcome, everyone, to Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. My name is Sam Beiko, and today I'm going to be hosting, because I'm taking this shit over. Anyway, wow. Today we're going to flip the script a little bit. Gregory just did some kind of sprint across the room.
He turned
off the air conditioner
for better audio. For
I
our
thought
dear
he
listener.
was literally departing this plane of existence because I had taken over as host.
See, most usurpers fail to realize the needs of the dear listener, whereas I, even though I have been dethroned, still care about you, dear listener.
I also
And
didn't
you,
address
Dan.
anyone as dear listener, and I knew I was forgetting something.
That's right. So
So what you're saying is
AC.
you're a benevolent tyrant.
Well,
Benevolent leader.
I'm a tyrant for sure. I don't know about that first one.
We would all be lost without his tyranny.
Zap. Join the fight. Make comics.
That's right. Now you have to introduce everybody. you
Yeah,
see?
so, dear listeners, you can tell there is another voice on this. We are joined today by the delightful Ariel Gordon, and she and Gregory today are going to be discussing a brand new project that they are collaborating on, which has been many years in the making, many back burners upon
So
which it
many
was
years,
laid,
actually.
and now it has come to the fore. It is the hot iron which now will be struck, and when the sparks hit, it will become a book. So,
And there's like a metaphor you can
so
play with where it
extended.
catches fire and then
Yeah.
burns up
Don't
and
burn
disappears.
books, people.
Yeah, burning books bad.
we're mostly talking about forging.
Thanks for having me on the show today, Sam.
Well, we didn't have anyone else.
Oh my goodness.
So I appreciate your candor and your desire to come on this show, Gregory.
Let's, dear listener, go back in our minds way back to 2016.
What a time that was.
Was it 16?
Well, according to my document metadata,
Okay.
2016. What were you doing then? Life was so different.
In
Technology was so different.
Ariel and I were taking a walk around my neighborhood because I recently purchased my house in 2016, and it's right on the Hart Trail. And she was telling me about this collaborative project.
You're
that
making
you two
that
were
up. Is that
doing.
true?
No, because then she and I tangentially started discussing our, amorphous collaborative project of doing an urban forest tarot deck.
Whoa. Hold on. So because when we then started working on it in earnest recently, all of our history together meant that I was like, well, the only person that can handle this kind of craziness is Sam. But you were there from the beginning. I didn't even know it.
Just as like a mention, I was aware of it. I've been aware of the project since it's been going.
Have you been its secret architect this whole time?
As not at all. In fact, I just have been going about my business.
Accusations.
Wow.
Skip to minute 10 for accusations.
That's right.
Of collusion.
Skip to 12 for arbitration.
Okay, so then what would you have said in 2016 of this? I want to know these things. What did you discuss? Because it was just a...
I think I just said,
Whisper
I'm writing
on it.
fiction with Greg. And she said, my condolences. And
That's accurate. Accurate.
But it was more like, Sam and I have known each other for a long time. And I think there's a lot of, mutual understanding. I'm always telling her she should do less. And then she adds 3 more things.
I love suffering.
And so does the person in the ambulance outside.
I know. In fact, they're coming for me, finally.
that's a
I'm
fire
going to
alarm.
get rest when they take
Yeah,
me to
your
the
ankle
asylum.
bracelet has
Yeah.
sounded.
I would wonder if there's a tally somewhere of how often a siren is in the background audio of this.
Every
I
single
think
time.
every single time.
So I think I was talking about that. I was talking about, our history, all the things we've worked on over the years, right? Working on some of those Alchemical Press books, being a surly booth girl
That's
for you
right.
at Comic-Cons the odd time with my poetry books. And, these things that I worked on with you. So, yeah, but, this was the first thing where we were collaborators instead of, I was part of a distant team, like, a peripheral part of your team. So we were just, what are you doing now? That's what writers talk about.
Yeah, that is what
like,
they're
so
talking
what's going on? And then you open up your head and a half hour worth of talk comes out. And then you switch and the other person does the same thing.
Okay, so then in 2016,
Yeah.
I was making some of my... No, they weren't my first graphic novels. I had done...
You were making Infinitum.
Yeah, we were doing Infinitum. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so this was my time travel, murder mystery graphic novel with the publisher who will not be named. But Samantha was my managing editor on that project. And then I saw, the way I remember it, and you can clarify it. So this is for the dear listener. This is us also trying to get a true account of the events that led to the current project. You posted something on social media, which we'll just leave the platform's names out of it, that said, does anyone want to work on something? Like, I'm kind of bored in between projects. Let's make up something and do it. Something to that effect. Is that right?
That sounds like me.
Yeah. And I happened to be on a lunch break, I think at that time, saw that, because I was teaching full-time then also, and was like, yeah, me, let's do something.
Yeah.
Right?
And then who had the first kind of incubus of this idea between the two of you?
In my recollection, the very first letter, because we decided to make it, we started sort of bouncing what it could be and how it could work if we were going to be in our own lives and we weren't going to be able to get together to do it. I don't remember whose idea it was that it would be letters, but I've always loved epistolary things. But I do recall that the first letter that came through, I think, was Ariel's, at least the very first scrap. So I always give her credit as being the one that actually, like, a lot of people, for example, will say, let's do something, and then they won't do anything. This is pretty common in people who have an urge to create something.
But Ariel primed the trebuchet.
That's right.
Let it fly over your battlement on your
I
side.
flung a load full of crap
That's
in your
right.
direction.
That's
It
right.
smashed headlong.
Yeah.
Onto his windshield, yes.
Yes, and then as he was scraping it off, in what was left behind in the smear, that's what came out.
And there's also, I think, part of me at that time that was probably so thrilled to just, I had placed a graphic novel with a legitimate publisher. I was doing some stuff, but there was a part of me that had started as a writer first and a graphic novelist second, and I could never kind of get my footing as a writer of prose. I just couldn't find the way to do it. So this gave me an excuse to be getting those reps in a little bit at that time while I was also working on another project. We've talked before on the show about my habits of weaponizing procrastination. And so, like, if I wasn't going to be working on Infinitum to get those pages in on time, or Midnight City, I guess, was probably also burgeoning at that time, then at least I was writing this other thing. I was at the writing table doing
And
some
you
work.
and I remember I would briefly join your writers group at your house. And I went to the salon where you would do art, and I would sit there with my laptop and write amongst people, like, smearing paint on things.
Yeah, that was during collaboratory days then. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so for the dear listener, what I used to do, we had a studio space on Arlington, and I always found that people should make art. This is my basic life premise, one of the facets of it. People should make art all the time for no reason. It's good for you. It's healthy. Just doesn't matter if it's for anything or for anyone and for any quote-unquote good reason. So we would create these collaboratory events, which were people from all walks of life who could come to the studio and just make art for no reason. We'd sometimes do collage, we'd do group paintings, we'd have models come in and do live drawings, we would have photographers come and take pictures of all the weird stuff that was going on. We'd have poets come and sit and just compose in one corner, someone on a typewriter in another.
You and I had a practice during those nights where you would draw something and you'd pass it to me,
That's
and I'd
right.
write on the page.
Oh, that's right. I have a bunch of those somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that was the start of all of that.
Get those out. That's good back matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ephemera. Oh,
Yeah.
the ephemera.
Yeah, I think we got it. The heart. There's the stomach.
And then
so
you
much.
came and did live drawing at one of my launches. I can't remember if it was before or after that.
Yeah, because I, at that time, had been doing a bunch of, what event was that? There was an event where models would come and they would be at public places, usually at clubs, and they would paint these big pictures of them. And I was doing a bunch of that live drawing stuff, and you said, hey, I'm doing a launch. Why don't you come listen to me read?
It was about monsters. They were poems.
That's
I remember
about
that.
monsters.
I went to that.
But the funniest thing was, like, I loved having you there.
Yeah.
But it was very weird because I was reading and everybody was watching him. And I realized, like, and I was like, oh. And then I realized, no, they're listening
to you.
but their eyes are there. And so, like, it was like, it took me a second to get past that. But, you know, it was fascinating. I think we actually drew over that painting.
I think we did at one of the collaboratories.
At one of the collaboratories,
That's
yeah.
right.
So I'm doing that. I'm thinking of yeah.
So based on this premise that you should casually make things, that's sort of, we were doing that kind of stuff all the time and inviting people to these excuses to casually make things. And one of the things that we did at Collaboratory was constantly paint over previous versions or draw over or cut up previous work because that wasn't what it was for. It wasn't to keep or hold or to present. It was just to express. And so this is the context of how a person could say, hey, let's make a creative project. And not a stranger on the internet answers. Although back in 2016, the internet was still kind of a safe place where friends could talk.
It was so lovely.
It was nice.
I mean, my social media is still a safe place, but sure. I don't know what you do on your social media.
Yeah, well, it's just I find it impossible to have any kind of conversation.
This is the Gregory roast now.
Yeah, I just find it.
It's just hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
What I kind of find interesting about that image of painting over is that now it's 8 years later, and have you two really kind of started from what you did start, like Ariel's first letter and maybe some of your first artwork, have you kind of painted over, and now you've arrived at this kind of final product?
Great question. Let's give some context first before we answer.
Yeah. Do it.
The context, dear listener, is that Ariel and I are working on this project that is tentatively titled now Blood Letters. And they're letters that have been written by us back and forth tangentially since 2016 about a war that never happened in a future that has not yet arrived. And
we're cousins. Cousin brothers.
Yeah, and it's two, it's a brother, a sister, and a cousin that are essentially this triangle trying to look out for each other. They don't care why it started or who the good guys, bad guys are. They all just want to get through it and be together again. It's kind of, and we didn't know that when we started. We discovered that because Ariel would write a letter and I'd ask a question. She might mention a cousin or a person and I'd say, oh, well, Albany, I haven't seen him in a while. And she'd say, oh, well, yeah, you did. Don't you remember this? And it would go back and forth the way letters used to go, where like you didn't know everything, you had to ask questions, and in that way we explored the corners of that world. But it kind of, I don't want to say fizzled, but
I think what happened is
that Ariel is a very busy and important best-selling award-winning poet traversing the Canadian wilds, and mudlarker and forest dweller, and that.
And I think
an
what happened,
advocate of the urban forest, like you, a busy person.
Yeah, well,
How dare you?
I like to be a busy person, but I think what happened is we wrote as far as we could without having a discussion about plot. Like we just kind of wrote letter after letter after letter, and they were fun, and our characters were, in some ways, our characters are versions of ourselves because mine's a poet, so he also writes poems about the war and about the people and places he's lost, and Greg's draws. Right? So both things that we would likely do if you're in those same situations. But the characters, in some ways, kind of emerged, like,
very much
from
as their
the
own people.
start.
Yeah.
And I think we wrote as far as we could without being able to sit down and, like, figure out, okay, like, what's actually happening and what's next. And at the same point, both of our projects were sort of starting to take over. So I had, at that point, like 2 books that I was working on, and then all the other, incidental things, right? That you get asked to do, all the little contracts, all the little, readings and one-offs.
The insistent parts.
Was the good part.
Was that Treed and sightseeing?
No. Yeah, it was Treed and Tree Talk.
Right.
Which was 2019 and 2020.
Yes.
And, it took me 4 or 5 years to work on both of them simultaneously to get them finished. And so, like, at a certain point, I think both of us were like, I like this. I'm enjoying working on this, but we need to stop for a while. Because A, we have to have that discussion, and B, I have contracts for these other books.
Yeah.
I've got 5 years in these other books. I have to finish these other books.
But help me, I don't recall any kind of structured conversation where we said, we're pausing.
No, we just drifted away.
Yeah,
I think that's just how it goes.
It was almost like a natural, like we would see each other in public still because of the way the community works in Winnipeg. But it was like those characters weren't writing letters to each other anymore, right? That's how it felt to me. It's like those characters aren't talking, but we were talking plenty.
Yeah.
And it didn't come up like, there was no pressure. It wasn't like, we had to do that thing.
What year was it?
Like
so
recently?
I went to a comic book event.
It was Prairie Comics Festival.
Which one?
This was got to be
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
All right.
And he's like, hey, our thing. I just found it in Google Docs.
Well,
Look,
no,
it's
here.
Here.
It started another way. Someone was asking about a project I did, and I was explaining that it was epistolary, and then you were standing right there, and like literally in my vision, I was like, epistolary, letters, letters that you write with another person. We have a book somewhere.
And then
it's like he'd awoken from the coma.
Yeah.
A vagrant.
Yes.
No, not Kate Beaton.
Yeah.
But he's like, Ariel. And he literally held up his phone and was like, I found our book.
I do mildly
when
remember the shouting across the West End Cultural Center.
Yeah.
I just in my days.
And
I think, well, there they go again.
Yeah. And what happened there, too, I think, is at that time, it was Matt Jodry from Epé Press. He was nearby, and we were talking about, like, he was giving me pressure for, like, next time you have a thing, don't produce it yourself, don't send it to someone else. Like, you keep threatening to send me something before it comes out, and then you're too fast. And I said to him, and he was mentioning about a project you were doing with him, too. So I think all those things sort of coalesced into...
Which I have not finished.
Right. Okay. Good. Because we stick it to him. No.
I refuse to stick it to Matt Jodry.
No. But so then all those things became a perfect storm of me saying to Matt, I believe, hey, Ariel and I are working on a thing. Hey, epistolary. Oh, hey, there she is right there. I guess that's a lost book. And then I remembered that, we had been writing it in Google Docs, so I looked, and I had kept that account active since then, and boom, lo and behold, they were all there. Mm-hmm. And it was like finding literally like a lost box of letters. Like when I reread
or a half a bucket worth of slop.
Oh. I prefer the nicer image. We need to stop comparing
I like the bucket.
I need to stop comparing it to
bucket
entrails.
Of slop is what happens when the nanite fog that disassembles our victims of this future war. There are plenty of buckets of slop in our stories.
Certainly. Now,
Good segue.
I would like to
Floppy segue.
Just point out that Gregory does seem to have a preoccupation with war in a lot of your work.
It's true.
There is a lot of, it's either the war has just happened or in the midst of the war, you're in the time war. Your Midnight City is a result of gang superhero war. Good
Automatic
Boys.
Age, yeah. Good
Automatic
Boys, yeah.
Age.
Yeah. What is wrong with me?
Where
How
does
is I broken?
Where does that setting, why does it sing to you so
I can tell you exactly
dearly?
why. I know exactly why. Because my grandfather, my Ave, he's Icelandic, was a survivor of World War II and suffered from some pretty deep... I wouldn't have known this if you had asked me this question 10 years ago. I wouldn't know where the obsession comes from, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about why my mind goes there. And I spent a lot of time silent with him. I would spend time there at the house. He was a very quiet man. We'd play chess. We would... not talk about his past. And every now and then it would come up because he would, if I was sleeping over there, if I was staying over, he had night terrors almost nightly, still related to the events of the war. And so I had a hard time as a very young boy reconciling, a person that could be so gentle, so calm, so thoughtful.
You want to be like, how many people have you killed, Grandpa?
That's right, you know, and it's like,
What have you seen, Grandpa?
Well, no,
he's
but
seen
like,
some things. And he would
how do
paint-
you imagine that this person that loves you and is so gentle has killed someone?
was capable.
Because
and
in our regular civilian lives, I mean, I have killed very few people.
Very few.
You know?
And he had a box of medals.
Yeah.
Which he didn't want to talk about.
Yeah.
And you don't get medals for
nothing.
not killing people.
Although they
in the
do
war,
have some
right?
participation war
There
medals.
was.
This is for you new people. I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits. You don't do your job, I'll shoot you. You get me.
We get you, sir!
Welcome to the Roughnecks.
Ratcats, Roughnecks!
He also painted. He would paint in oil paints. He would wake up from bad dreams. He would go down into the basement and he would paint these recurring images of waves crashing on the shores of Lake Winnipeg. And he would just always, this was his way of putting it all away.
Yeah.
And,
That's home.
Right? So I think that as a person who is completely free of that experience, it has mystified me that you could carry it in a way that was constructive at all. I'm mystified by that notion, that you could somehow make a good thing out of something so horrible and tragic. Because to me, that is just unfathomable to be in a position where you are no longer, it doesn't matter the cause, it doesn't matter the reason. Once it's happening, you're just in harm's way. And all these other things take over.
And also, I mean, war is a pretty, like, if plot is about conflict, war is a pretty good setting for conflict. It's a natural, it's out of your control, right? Like, there's all these things that you can move the pieces around of a story, right? Like, and the war is the justification for all of those movements in some ways.
And it's so large. It's
Yeah.
such a large, all-encompassing conflict that when you're back and focusing on the people and the individuals who are experiencing it, you're longing for that little bit of humanity and the giant,
And also
meat
as
grinder.
a plot device, they're full of secrets.
Yeah.
Right? So there's all this withheld information that people, it's either unknowable, untold, or unreachable. And that is a good place. As a plot device, it
Yes.
makes for a useful
Did
cavity.
I tell you that my grandfather was a spy in the Second World War?
Yes, we have talked about this, but please
Yeah.
tell it for the dear listener.
Yes. So my grandfather was Dutch and Hungarian, but his mom married a British military officer. And so he had British citizenship. And during the war, he was, this sounds horribly pretentious, but I guess when you reached adulthood in his family, and presumably when you were a man, you would do your world tour. You travel around before university or after university or
Sure.
something. I don't know much about it, but he was in Canada.
Times were different then.
Yeah, he was in Canada when the war broke out, and because he had British citizenship, he could get Canadian citizenship like really easily, and he was recruited because he had all these languages, and was European-y. He had all these languages, so he was recruited.
Into intelligence.
Into
because he has
intelligence,
this.
yeah.
So here's the parallel
And-
to that. Wait, before you
Go ahead,
end,
go.
here's the
Mhm.
parallel, because it's like where you are and how you, my grandfather didn't want to be conscripted into any infantry in the Canadian. That was his fear, is that he'd end up put in the infantry. So he wanted to volunteer for the Air Force. But there wasn't one in Canada that would give him that track. So he left Canada, falsified documents, pretended to be an American, joined the American Air Force, and was shipped overseas to fight with the RAF.
Awesome.
Right? So
And
it's-
Stephenson, who was the leader of the Canadian spy effort, or the British spy effort, but used recruited Canadians for it, was Icelandic from Manitoba, or adopted into Icelandic. community.
dun,
That's right.
Yeah,
when
but he was a
And
big
he's
liar.
the prototype
For-
for James Bond.
Ian
Yes, I
Fleming,
know,
yeah,
yeah.
who was also a spy. But yeah, so I had this, I knew this story, but my grandfather didn't like children, and I didn't. He died before I became an adult. No, he literally did not like children, and lived far away and liked it that way.
He was where he belonged.
Yeah, and he had 5 children, and like both he and my grandmother, who was a Dutch war bride, who had been raised by her wealthy grandparents, They had 5 kids in the middle of nowhere outside of Thunder Bay, had no householding skills, had no practical skills, had both been raised by nannies. So like, I just imagine like 5 kids in 6 years and how rough that was, and how they figured out how to cope and make money, and like.
Or what is the alternative?
Just
like my
subsist.
grandmother like had my mom when she was 19 in Vancouver and malnourished. Like they arrived post-war in Vancouver and then somehow decided to go from there to like the outskirts of Thunder Bay and have 4 more kids. And, So anyways, but like he didn't talk about any of that stuff. My mom knew some bits of the story, but every time there's one of those like Canadian spy or British spy books that comes out, I always flip through to see if his name is there.
Right.
And my grandfather actually changed his name permanently, as it turned out, because they said, "Don't if you have a last name and you still have relatives in Europe, change it to something else, so they can't be targeted."
Interesting.
Yeah. So he was a Grunberg, and then he changed his name to Laban, which was an older family name apparently. So my mom, when she married, like didn't feel any compunction about losing the name because she knew it wasn't the actual name anyways.
And so this idea of like changing records and switching stuff around shows up in our thing a lot, because we have this character who has a great facility to manipulate the data, and the who they claim to be or not allows her to have some agency in protecting her loved ones in the war. This reminds me of, so my grandfather, it was an open secret. And we found out it was an open secret, this whole falsified documents thing, because when I finally tracked down his service record, he was listed as American Airman Paul, quote, the Canadian Burton, right? So
Dirty liar.
Right, like they knew,
Yeah.
Everybody knew how he had got there, and it was just that he had volunteered. And because he was volunteering a lot, at those days, if you were asking to join, they'd open the doors for you.
I just have to say I have a better story than that, because my paternal grandfather fought in
I didn't know we were one-upping.
No,
Okay, hold on,
this
let me
is a
think.
competition.
They are. Get out your knives.
He fought in World War I and World War II, so he was not fought, but in World War II he was a what do they call that, POW camp guard, because they recruited all of those old soldiers to do that,
Right.
and got demoted because there was an escape. But the best story is in World War I. I got his records, and he had gonorrhea and was also shot in the ass. So he had a good time.
Yeah.
Right.
He had a good time
Yeah.
in World War I.
So we laugh, we jest, we're talking about this, and I think there is a tendency to come back around to your question of like, why do these things show up in my work all the time? Mm-hmm. There's this tendency to romanticize it. If you read, and I'm a big pulp era consumer, I like I like many of the ideas that showed up in pulp fiction, but I dislike the way they were presented or the lesson they were trying to.
Because in no
Great.
way in any of your work are you glorifying.
Yeah,
war.
no, that's the
There is
opposite.
none of that. It's mostly a setting or a device,
That's
and
right.
it's never anything that should be sought.
I think, though, that our trope in some ways is you read a lot of sort of memoirs of World War I or World War II, and young men from rural places who would have had no way to go to university, they would have had no way to leave their small towns, right? They saw the war. They didn't know anything about war. No one did, especially at First
Yeah.
World
It's
War.
not anything-
So they saw it as a
what
way
they
of
did
like,
was romanticized to
Yeah.
them in order to attract them.
yeah, but they also were like, this is my chance to see the world, and
Yes.
maybe I'll survive, right? Like,
And
but
let's
this is
step back. I don't think they romanticized the war. Enlistment. They romanticized
Yes.
enlistment
And
with
the hero's
opportunity.
journey.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Yes.
And that still came back World War II. That was
Yeah.
still the like
Yeah.
they still, even though you had, but I think back to World War I when they were struggling to recruit enough soldiers, and the women that would go around with the white feathers.
Yeah.
Like, that is some personal shit.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being motivated by government, by any war, to target young men and tell them you're a coward, join the war.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, especially knowing what we know now about how the absolute futility and how in the end there was so much waste.
Yeah.
And over 4 years, no one advanced. They stayed in basically one place.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of killing enough Germans to make Germany stop. And it was just how feudal. I mean, they're all very feudal,
Yeah.
and they're all very bloody.
And
they're,
I think that's what this explores, because we don't see them enlisting necessarily. Like, we don't see my character Chris enlisting. We see him already in, and Alb
Yeah.
has just gone through basic.
do we
training.
discover why in any, or is it's just there's no real, they're just there?
No, so
Well,
one
I
of the
think they're-
things we're shaping it in this draft, I think that there's a room to answer these whys, but I'm resisting it because we've seen it so often. But also I'm resisting it because how it started doesn't matter to the characters. All that matters is this thing they didn't want to be a part of is happening whether they like it or not. We are not addressing what made the first person sign up, but we hint at the fact that there are three characters: it's Millicent, Albany, and Christopher, and that Albany and Christopher join up so that Millicent doesn't have to. She has a propensity. She should be probably recruited into military intelligence. She should definitely be a code breaker. She should have all these things, and they recognize this in this loved one. And so they destroy her records and they volunteer in maybe a misplaced effort to be like, if they get enough of our family, they'll stop looking for her, right?
And we do show recruitment cards. So we don't know, like, I actually don't have an answer as to how Chris joined. Right? Like, he appeared to me already having joined.
I think...
Or already being there, right? And being a couple years in at that point.
Yeah, and in my mind, he's joined up because he's bought that original story. Enlistment is good.
Yeah.
I will have
He's a
these
rule
things.
follower,
I
for
will
sure.
follow the rules. I will do what is necessary. I am loyal to the people. And if they say to keep them safe, you should sign up. And it turns out he's good at it. And he suffers horribly as a result of these things.
I would say in some ways he suffers the least.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because he goes fully into that world and into that mode.
Yeah.
But he's allowed to come back, right? He loses the least of, like his family at home lose more than him. Albany in some way loses more than him, and he suffers. But I don't know. Like, I feel like he's okay. Like, I don't know if he would have night terrors. We'd have to see. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, he does.
Dear
listener.
don't put night terrors on my character.
Oh, he's got him. He's got him. I'm going to
It's like
send
a
a letter saying...
syringe that you're injecting into him.
I'm just going to write a letter saying, how are the night terrors? You haven't talked about them in a while, and then you'll be forced to respond. That's the other thing. The rules
Well, I
of our,
welcome that. I welcome that kind of prompt in a letter. Just saying.
the rules of our engagement were thus, right? If there's some part you wanted in the story, you tried to frame it in your letter to get it in there. And if they, in a call response, if Ariel was like, oh yeah, cool, I'm going to pick up that thread, then you explored it. And if they didn't, it didn't make sense to push it because you wouldn't in a letter, unless it was like of a burning importance. You wouldn't follow up and say, why did you ignore that? You would just follow the thread of the correspondence. So we've woven what's important to the characters in a very interesting way for me, from a prose perspective.
And even though we met a couple of times to talk plot, we weren't very directive.
No, that's what I find interesting, especially when you're discussing your background context into arriving in just this world that you've built, is that you both have two completely different experiences with war and with generational
Which we didn't know any
trauma.
of this before
You didn't
we
know
started.
any of that, but you're both exploring it tangentially on like the same parallel in
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
story.
Well, and it's funny because Greg keeps on saying, we're supposed to be writing an apocalyptic story, and you keep on injecting hope
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah. Why is everyone so capable of joy? Let's crush it. Let's crush that joy.
And I'm like, and then I had an apple, and I was happy again.
Yeah. It's amazing. So what's great about it is then the role that I've taken, because one of the structural pieces is that the tech, the use of what advanced technology, how it affects, what are the quasi-technical specifications. Ariel sort of will text me and say, that's your job. You do that. You figure out how that works. And so what I started saying was, well, then your job is to manage their souls, essentially. Keep their spirits alive, regardless of what I do to them. And so that has been the push-pull.
Will that be your credit? Soul manager,
Soul.
and yours would
That's
be
not
soul
bad.
crusher.
Just soul crush. It's not
but
bad.
It's interesting because we both, like, I really love collaborating, but I've never collaborated at the level of the sentence or the level of the stanza or line. I have always, I did a collaboration with poet Brenda Schmidt, and we just did a call and response. And so, and even when it came to publication, I sort of wanted it to be clear who had written what. So throughout the book, even in our foreword, I was unitalicized and she was italicized. So we didn't do any other notation, but that was like,
Right.
it was clear who wrote what.
Whereas
if
the
you wanted
line
to
is
track
very
it.
blurred. There's a lot of these letters, reading them from
Because
those
I was
early
just
lines.
thinking that when I know that you've conceptually pitched this project to me just in conversation. Gregory art, Ariel writing, but the two of you have been writing.
Yeah, all the words
letters.
came first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
So you're
but,
both
so we
writers
both
on
wrote
this.
like I have never written anything from Alb's point of view, but so we have shared custody of Millie, but I write soul Millie, human Millie, and you write machine Millie.
Yeah.
You write code Millie.
So
that's
this-
been interesting.
Yeah, we have a character who is capable of some. She's sort of on this line of she could be a wonderful, loving, fruitful member of community if community didn't rely on technology. But she's also born in a time where, and we've created these medical documents where she was tested in utero, and they found through genetic markers what her tendencies would be for. And so the powers that be in the Parliament of Mystery are trying to bring those out in her by putting outside pressures on her to see if they can activate those genes and make her into one of these people that would be much more of use to them in the context of war. And so we've also built this scaffold where we put pressure on her and see how she responds. And sometimes the best way out of it is the human side, and sometimes the best way out of it is, it's still a human side, but is this other...
But in some ways, her outlet, her way of processing is the letters.
Yeah,
But what she does is separate from that. What she does is the code maker, code breaker.
And
right?
our contextual, I don't know what you call it, like framing device for how all of the letters and the documents and the emissaria, I call them embellishments. All the embellishments are collected in this volume, are that Millie has collected them and is reviewing them now at some future date to make sense of how she felt about the situation.
Yeah.
So it's her archive.
And that really presents like a what happens to Alb and Chris, and is it just Machine Millie now?
Is it
all
both?
that's
Has she
left?
figured out how to integrate
Yeah,
both sides of her?
Yeah.
I
Oh,
was
got
just
the
in
chill. I
like
feel it.
the
That's
question.
exactly what we're after,
the big
yeah.
question that I had are the letters themselves creating a pressure preventing Millie from reaching this pinnacle that this
You get it.
this overarching group finds as a threat? Because as you're talking to me about letters, a lot of times in war, letters are opened by a main office and read before they are sent.
We have all
to-
these past censor stamps
or
and things.
or redaction.
And I guess do you want to talk about one of Millie's contribution? Do it.
I'm
Go.
so excited about this because you brought this up is exactly right. And so, dear listener, when I first thought, okay, Sam has to be our substantive editor, and a substantive editor helps shape the story into the shape you hope it will be, right? It's because I understood your propensity to get the shorthand of these larger ideas and say them so succinctly. So you have proven yourself adequate to more
Hired.
than adequate.
No.
Yeah, hired.
Yay!
Yeah, but
This was
so
actually
this
a
is
job
related to those
no.
letters. That exact question goes like this. Millie recognizes that the letters are superfluous to the war effort, and at a certain point, all the things, they use these tubes and wires to send it. It's pretty low tech to get transmissions from the front to back, and they're going to be cut off at one point. No, they're not going to bother with it. And she takes a role in this intelligence community to suggest, either accurately or falsely, that's up to the reader to decide, that platoons that receive letters
From home.
from home kill more of the enemy than ones that don't.
Interesting. So that she can continue to receive the letters
That's
from
right.
Alb and Chris.
And so the blood letters in this case, it becomes this, that's sort of where the idea of the title came from, is that she is keeping that line open and funneling resources from other places of the war, meaning other people are dying.
so that she can keep
can
letters.
protect these
Yeah.
two.
Yeah. And know where they are, and know, and in all warfare, regardless of what century you're researching it, communication is the actual technology that wins or loses wars. The ability to communicate quickly with someone, somewhere, somehow. That's the real lever. And so we can play with that, but what she's actually, the only reason she's doing is because she loves these members of her family and she wants to hear from them and know they're okay.
Is there any part of the story where they're all searching for one another, or are they?
It's almost
Yes.
the whole thing.
Oh, good. I was just kind of waiting for it to come to that, because I was just like, are they just happy to fight this conflict and never see one another,
Yeah,
or are they
no,
all
they're
trying to get to one
They're
another?
trying so hard. And in fact, one of the parts that I had trouble reconciling writing the story was, I believe it was your idea to have one of them go missing right away or be hurt. And then they get together. It's like, oh, I'm going to go to where you are in the hospital, but now I can't find you. And I actually resisted the idea of their close proximity without contact. But then, again, it became about the spirit, right? Like, became for me a tool to crush them more. They're close enough that they should be able to find each other, but they still can't.
Cyrano. Go bug Mom, Cyrano.
My character can't remember what it's like to eat regular meals or to have hair on his head. Like, he's been a part of the war machine long enough that he's basically forgotten what it means to be human. And so Millie makes sure he gets to stay there without orders, drifting around the barracks, and he slowly regains himself, right? Like, one of the early drawings you drew, Greg drew him with a waxed mustache. And at a certain point in the war, they said, you can't have that stupid mustache. It's going to get caught in the seal. And where are you going to get the mustache wax, et cetera, et cetera. They were impractical, take it off. So he hasn't had the mustache. He hasn't had, he's just been stripped of everything that makes him him. And so he starts to regain all of that. And then Millie arranges, he's got these enhanced, these implants that enhance him as a soldier. And Millie arranges for him to have them removed. Right? So that and part of it, I think our thinking is Millie wants to make sure he's human enough to come home.
And she manipulates in some of our writing other people to suffer horribly to make a case that she has to pull certain people from the front lines to have them watched, or, hey, these implants, these augmentations we're giving, they're driving soldiers crazy and they're killing their own people. We got to pull some of them back and investigate. She just makes sure it's her brother that comes back. Right? She just makes sure that it's the people that she wants, that she manipulates from.
So in some ways, I guess it's not machine Millie. It's human Millie and monster Millie.
Yeah.
And I really like Millie. And she's these people are very young, right? We de-aged them recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were going to have them older, and then we realized, no, it's more interesting if they have to have all these experiences for the first time.
Yeah, it's like when you throw a 19-year-old at Europe and they're just like, I'm going to go discover myself and
but
go
we
to
even
university.
made them younger than
We
that.
made them younger.
But
yeah.
you put them in a war, in a meat grinder.
We have the age of recruitment in our war is 16.
That's beautiful.
And so people at 14 are falsifying their documents to join up.
And I like how you're creating this distinction of monster Millie, machine Millie, human Millie. But it just sounds like she's dehumanizing herself in order to humanize her friends.
And part of it
as
is that
possible,
she likes Monster Millie. She likes that she can see these patterns. And she's restless back at home. And a lot of the letters are her going, please, can I come? I'm going to join up. I can't stand being home with the old people and the babies. And they're like, oh, fuck no, Mom. Fuck no, Millie. Stay where you are, please. And they try to explain it to her. But she has these abilities. And she hasn't been able to use them at all. And that's really hard for her, right? It's her main aptitude, and she has no outlet for it. So in some ways, I think there's relief when she finally lets herself be recruited, right? Pulled into the war efforts.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
she's been through enough at that point that she's not a blind recruit. She's not like, whatever you want, and I'm just following orders. She's like, I have my
She's
own
inside
agenda.
the machine, and she's trying to manipulate it
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
her own ends.
And also one of the things that's showing up now in this draft as we're like refining it a little bit line by line, or like the motivation between the letters, and we're like maybe adjusting who said what when. One of the things that's really shown up for me in this draft is that Millie has talents, and lots of people in her life have noticed and are trying their best to make her a, quote, productive member of society with the talents that she has. Where they're coming from, you know, they're not evil. It's like the banality of evil is kind of what's happening here. Here is a nation in crisis, and it needs its resources to defend itself, and she is a human resource. Of course, they should use her. But she's also a human person who will be used up.
And a young
Yeah.
human person.
Yeah.
So
So
Yeah.
it's just very interesting the more that I hear about this. It's just going this way, and I'm just like, where is she going to fall off? What is
Right.
the
So that's what we hope the reader
what is
will
the
feel.
culmination of all of her
efforts.
efforts, her sacrificing of others, and I guess the fates of her loved ones in that. And what it sounds like she is trying to push the machine of war as hard as it can go, and how far is she going to lose herself in that? Wow.
Well, and like when a bad thing is happening that you can't escape, you try to ride it out. If I learn anything from my own grandfather's letters, and you know, part of this too, as long as we're talking about it, he had these boxes of letters that got ruined in a flood. So there's so many lost correspondences that I will never get to read. But some of the idea is like, this thing is happening. You can't stop it. How can you ride it in a way that you can live with? Like, how can you get to the other side of it, if it's possible to get to the other side, in a way that you could live with yourself? And that's what he was trying to do. You know, like I don't know, because he was an orphan, and there's a whole story there. Maybe there's a whole other book in that story, but I don't know when he would have heard or how he would have learned the cautionary tale of, as he put it, staying out of the mud, right? He was terrified of being in the mud.
The trench.
Yeah, and so wherever those stories reached him, the only other solution to him was like, oh, well, then I'll fly. You know, I'll figure out how to fly. But he couldn't be a pilot, so they made him a gunner. You know,
Yeah.
so he changes his records, he crosses borders, he gets lost, he gets found. He's like, so all these things we're doing, and they weren't conscious at the time. These are now third draft in my mind, fourth draft revisions of like, what is it really about to me? It was fun to make. That's the fun. So like collaboration is the fun part. Make it up, make up some cool technology, have some cool conflicts. All right, oh, that's cool. Those parts are cool. Okay, now we made all this work, and we're going to shape it. What's it mean
Yes,
to
because
me?
now the immediacy is that you are going to be publishing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer now in just the floating miasma shared ether. It's now
Mm-hmm.
being composed and put together and refined for public consumption.
Yeah, and in the interest of the public record, it's Great Plains Publications is currently, we have an agreement in principle, no contract yet, to publish this project. They are the publisher of Automatic Age. And
So talk about the link between those novellas, the Automatic Age books, and our book, because I find that kind of fascinating.
yeah, so in my mind, if you are a fan of the Automatic Age, and there are a few lines where there is a war referred to, it could be this war.
Yeah.
And there's enough of a connection. And just at that time, I had written in 2016, long before I wrote The Automatic Age, I used the term automatics in our letter draft to represent
Like an android.
yeah,
type character.
rubber-faced android that was trying to like assert their human rights by saying like, I'm willing to die, so give me rights. And if they joined up for the war effort, they could be given human rights, the human right to die, essentially. And so that is a very early thing, and I didn't realize that until much later,
That you'd lifted that character class.
that idea and that whole thing lived in me.
Because, yes, in any of this, you've mentioned the overarching governing body, but you haven't mentioned the enemy.
That's right.
So are you going to mention the enemy at any part of
The
this?
enemy is war. And I think, I mean, I have a feeling that we should call them the Imperial Dynasty, something vague enough that suggests an architecture of power, but I almost like that we never mention them.
I think we're so inside the letters. Like, no one ever says, I am in England and I have just crossed the border to France, or I
can't wait to get some Hun.
Yeah, like there's none of, but yeah, there's none of that, right? Like we don't. It's all of that is unsaid, and we don't say who our side is. We don't say
and
who the other
I
side
don't
is.
think it's necessary.
No, I don't
Honestly,
think it is
it's
either.
Not. I think
because it would be like, cousin, we're fighting this war for England, and yes,
No.
and I'd like to go back to Brighton where we live eventually.
They all know.
Yeah,
they all are in it. They're all stuck in
Yeah.
it. They don't need to explain it to
I
each
don't know.
other.
A lot of that exposition is just bullshit anyway.
It's bullshit anyway. And in letters, you don't write about what you know. You ask questions about what you don't know. That's what a letter is for.
Or
right?
you express.
Yeah.
You tell people.
Or you are
need to tell them.
disassociating as hard as
That's right.
possible.
Or processing, right? Like both.
So one thing that came up in the storyline is we're not talking about the enemy, but we are talking about the weapons and the means of the conflict and how that all works. And we kind of created a internal architecture for the basis of the technology, and we established, or more or less I established, and Ariel said, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That one technology sort of begat the other. And so in my mind, I made this little, if one group has this.
That's the Akira jacket.
That is, we do have
I just watched that movie.
Yeah, what a great.
Sorry.
Yeah. Welcome to Super Pulp Science, where all the stuff in the room sometimes distracts the guest.
Although Akira does fold nicely into.
It does.
Akira is hardcore, though.
Yeah.
Wait, please tell me we're not going to have any old magic babies in our story.
Or just
Millicent
crushing
is a magic baby.
existential.
She's
blow.
old at the
kind
end.
of a
She's an
magic
old magic
baby.
baby.
It's afraid. It's afraid!
What I was trying to get at is, like, if one technology existed, like the trenches were a result of machine guns, right? You had machine guns, so now you had to dig trenches. First you had rifles.
And then you had to have a place to bury people, so you buried them in the wall of the
That's
trenches.
right, in the wall of the trenches. And then you have trenches, so we need to get over trenches, but there's machine guns, so now there's tanks. Like this, each thing is a response to what the enemy did. So I tried to create that escalation in the technology, which starts to show up in the letters where they're surprised by certain methods and things that are occurring, and they can't believe the risks that their so-called betters are taking with their lives.
Yeah.
But of course, they're the ones on the front line seeing
And
it.
I think we took some of our knowledge of existing war technologies, like mustard gas in First World War.
Mm-hmm.
Like my grandfather was mustard gas, the one with the gonorrhea and the gunshot ass.
So we took mustard gas plus
Which is
modern
your
drone
misting.
warfare.
Yeah.
And we
Blood
said,
mist.
okay, there's a fog made up of tiny machines, and it's directable. So now instead of just being, like mustard gas was not practical because the wind would take it wherever you wanted, but if you could have a fog that could crawl and drag itself against the wind.
And was also purple and smelled of lilacs.
That's right, smelled of lilacs. It's purple, so you kind of like it and you inhale it, and then it begins to disassemble you as soon as you do. So now everyone has to have these.
Scary
Right?
fog.
Nice.
Yeah, and then it reassembles those particles into these masses of meat and horrible things
And
in
then
the
aims
fog.
them at people.
It's a recruiting fog.
That's right,
Yes.
exactly right. So the more it collects biomass from the front lines, the more it has to use
And
against.
then, can I say this is terrible? But we have a similar technology called the bag.
Yeah.
So if you're injured, you put your hand in a bag. Or if you get your hand shot off, the bag rebuilds it. And that's also nanites.
Based on the reconstituted.
Yeah,
So
based
it's-
on recon. Yeah, that's
So
right.
it's the same technology, but used in different.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So one side uses it to repair, and the other side uses it to take apart, and that's how they're
But
kind of.
none of them last very long, is the secret. So I wrote a poem for this called Don't Go in the Bag.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
See, I cannot handle body horror.
Oh,
but
well.
you two really are having the best time of your lives. I'm sitting here just trying to go somewhere nicer.
Where is that?
Yeah.
Well, so then.
But don't worry, I'll compartmentalize for this project.
So
You
here-
can turn yourself into Machine Sam.
Oh.
Human
Well-
Sam, Machine Sam.
No tears for the writers, no tears for the reader, no tears for the substantive editor, no.
None. No tears in war.
But
There's no crying in baseball.
Also, yes.
I was just at my very first I go to one baseball game a year. Thank you, Friesens Corporation. I go to one baseball game a year.
Pivot to something nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to help you, give you advice. Now let's go back to the horrible gloop. Dripping
the
from
bucket of slop.
Yeah, bucket of slop. Right. So what we've got is a big bucket full of the letters, the writing, the correspondences, which are, I would say, 90% finished. There's like 10% of whatever
Finishing.
the story's missing needs to be written.
Yes.
But that's where, dear listener, a substantive editor is a good person to bring in, so that as you're revising it and as you've got it, like we could hand it to you and say it's done.
Here's a big pile.
Yeah. But what we're trying to do is organize it as a print ready, won't be print ready, but that's how I'm flowing it, laying it out so that all the images, all the letters, all the
Drawings
and poems and all the schematics and the maps and all of that kind of stuff
all this shit that Millie would put in a folder.
That's right.
After.
is in the order that makes you feel what you're supposed to feel, because the conceit is Millie's trying to make sense of how she feels about it. So it's supposed to represent the order in which it expresses how she actually feels about the event. So some of the letters are chronological more or less.
Yeah.
But we've presented a few of them, doubles of a few of them, excerpts at the very beginning, so that they become the setup of the world. Here's how the world's different. Here's why things are doing.
And this is why I need Greg, because I haven't written a lot of fiction. I write prose, and I've written narrative prose now in my essay collections. But they're pretty. I tend to write braided essays, but one strand would be the narrative. One strand would be like talking about the mushroom or the tree or whatever it is. Like, so plot and narrative is something that I find strange, because in my poetry I give you a moment, right? I give you a moment and how it feels and how it looks and where your eye should go. So I'm good at those. And so it's good to have Greg, because once I knew where I had to get with the letters, when I was writing my letters, as soon as I knew where I had to get, like, I was fine. I could sit there and write forever. And I feel like I could figure out plot at the level of the letter, but I can't conceptualize an entire novel's worth of plot. Like, it's just not something I've done a lot of. So that's because Greg is all plotty.
Plot!
He's like, tell me what's... Like, he gets this tenor to his voice where he's going to be we're going to do this thing, Ariel. And I'm like, are we?
I guess if we must.
Right.
Which I find thrilling, because you entered kind of into this mishmash project to try to elevate more of your narrative.
That's right.
And I have to say, I love all your art, but I really like Greg the writer, and I wanted to play with Greg the writer. Like, I so like everything you've done for this, but the main person I see myself collaborating with is Greg the writer. And you know...
It's Greg the writer that is excited to be part of this project. It's Greg the bookmaker, and under the horrible pressure forces of the world and how it consumes content, that has created a need in which, it's... You give people more of what they're asking for sometimes, and you give them less of what they're asking for other times. And so I'm taking my new skills and wrapping them around this earlier nascent writer version of myself. And it's like...
So it's a book sandwich.
Yeah.
It's bloody, flesh-filled, nanite,
that
speckled
sounds like a salami sandwich to me.
Sandwich.
Yes.
In a bucket. There's also slop and something smeared. Gravy. And it's all going to coalesce into this beautiful, damned project. Or maybe hopeful. We'll see.
A bloody palimpsest.
Yes. Although one of the first books I read was a palimpsest novel, and I forget the author, but he was in Montreal, and he spoke French and English. So the book was French and English, no translations. And it was about someone who thought that when he touched people, he could hear their thoughts. And that was not good for him as a person. It didn't help him to be better in the world.
It wouldn't be.
I don't think it would be.
He burns his hands and winds up in psych ward. So the book is written in psych ward. And he uses palimpsest. So there's a full page of writing, and he's pasted news articles from the era. Like actual overtop. And it was so, like, while I was reading it, I was like, motherfucker.
Right.
Like, I want to, like, you could see, like, actual, like, ooh.
So you were being driven mad while you were trying to engage with
I really hated the palimpsest of it.
Right.
Like, and I guess it was designed, it was him protecting himself from the therapist, because his therapist got to read his journal. So if he could write the hardest things and then cover
glue
them.
stuff over top. Oh,
Like,
that's
oh my
an
God, as a
interesting
reader, I was like, I would have paid anything to have a version without the goddamn articles pasted over top.
appealable version.
So that is just one note I want you to remember. Don't put anything on top of the writing.
It's too late. There's a whole bunch.
Well,
a whole bunch like that.
all
I
right,
didn't
well-
know that this was a trigger for you, Ariel. In my layouts, I've done it.
Well, now that it's been revealed,
Yeah.
it's going to be pointed out mercilessly by me, the substantive editor.
That was me in my 20s. I feel like if our weird clot of text and art, if it makes sense, I don't mind some things being obscured.
Yeah, there we go. So,
Well, dear listener, Gregory did just try to wrap up the podcast.
no, what I was
but-
going to say is before we wrap up, you're the substantive editor. Help the reader understand what that role is as a final thought. And that way, Ariel and I can also hear what's expected of us next for you.
All right, everyone, gird your loins.
To the sticking point!
That's right. So, dear listener, I have been on this show a couple of times, and I've spoken about my work as an editor. And it did come out in this discussion. An editor is mostly someone who brings it all together after the 8+ years of it floating about.
Oh, it's weird.
2016 to 2024 is that many years, Ariel. Although we can't count the lost years.
No.
From the war at
The
home.
event.
The Lost Weekend
The
is our
event.
book. No.
Yes.
Very little sex in our book. It's not a Lost Weekend.
Very little. So again, the editor comes on a completely unbiased, but is that third set of eyes in this case that will be able to pull out the core meaning, kind of see how it flows through consistently, and not really stick to that if it's not necessary, if it doesn't need to be consistent, or just kind of finding out what the meaning and the importance is to not only the creators, but the story, what could be left behind, what could be explored further to create that original image that you want to show the reader. So I'm not really in it for any glory, dear listener. I don't want you to think that I'm here to just kick the door in and say, well, now it's time to put in my impression because I'm taking over the wheel. Just like I did with this podcast. It's not.
But we need it. So here's the way I think of it. We as writers have our darlings. And an editor's job is to have no darlings but the story.
And you two love killing things. It's very evident by this book. So you're going to have to kill your darlings. But maybe
No,
you
we
won't.
want them to survive, remember?
Yeah.
We want them, the human part, to survive.
Says
if
the
it
soul
can.
crusher.
If it can.
Yeah,
It's just my role. I don't mean it,
that's right.
right?
It's not personal.
I can write villains because I'm not one.
It's not personal. It's just blood letters. So with that, dear listener, I want to thank Ariel Gordon for coming on today with Gregory Kmiechuk for Super Pulp Science. We talk about how genre gets made. Now go out there, join the fight, and make comics.
Zap.